Alright, Boba Fett was on screen for about, 7 minutes? And it was enough for the audience to decide he was the best, before he was the dead. We'd already met Han Solo, an arrogant douchebag with a lot of unsavory friends, and, after he ended up betraying his own self-interest to assist the rebellion against the man in charge, we knew by the nature of plot math, one of those guys would get contracted to take him out. Greedo wasn't it, apparently. Whoever they created to stop him would have to be someone we'd take seriously, whose morals couldn't be compromised. So, how do you design a character to represent this? Easy. You take away his face. That was the simple genius of Boba, of a lot of things in the original Star Wars. He's an icon, representative of Han Solo's character flaws coming back to bite him. The kind of guy he used to be or could become. The kind of guy that job attracted. There was no wider reading that had to be done, no wiki to tell you all his favourite foods or boy bands or whatever. You got who Boba was by looking at him, and he was a very effective tool in getting across that the stakes, at the end of Empire, had been well and truly raised. Thing is, he was so effective, people wanted more, and suddenly Boba isn't just a cool-looking bounty hunter who happened to be in the right place at the right time. He's a super important component to the Star Wars mythos. A clone of his dad is a huge part of a Sith conspiracy involving clones who got his armor from a race of guys who all dress exactly like that apparently, and who, how many books? Too many books. Like Vader, expanding the literal detail of Boba's life would never live up to the impression he made, and that's kind of been the whole franchise's issue. Maybe they knew this, maybe that's why they decided to end it quick, chuck him into the space snatch. Lucky sod. The problem with Star Wars has always been Star Wars. It's always talked about as a vacuum-sealed epoch, like it was a bunch of amazing ideas that sprung fully formed from the mind of George Lucas ready to be franchised, when the very point of the original films was to explore existing methods of storytelling based on the stuff George was already into. Samurai movies, westerns, Arthurian legends, Flash Gordon. Sisyphus! Stuff burned into the collective culture's DNA. Not a criticism. He wanted to play with filmmaking, iconography, and philosophies from existing art to prove a point about their effectiveness, and the impression it left on us was the same impression those works left on him. It wasn't about creating a detailed universe with all this intricate lore. It was about the joy of telling stories.
Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
I guess nobody could recreate exactly what he started, but my feeling was that George and the expanded franchise lost sight of those values. Yes, it got hugely convoluted, but it also became way too self-conscious about its now massive place in pop culture, more about trying to present Star Wars as a complex prestige drama on either end of the quality spectrum. The prequels were flatly shot lore dumps stretching 10 words to 10,000. The sequels and spin-offs were billion-dollar rehashes, with one taking a long time to lecture me on why the kind of Star Wars film I might have expected was wrong to expect at all, even though I never actually expected anything other than the movie they seem to make anyway, so thanks for that. It's not that they don't have moments that are interesting or well made or whatever. It doesn't negate whatever you personally might have taken from them, and I ain't God. Yet. But I don't know, it's all a bit removed from a series that opened with stuff exploding while two droids stand kibitzing in a hallway.
I'm not getting in there.
The original films weren't trying to defend their place in cinematic canon. In now doing so, I feel the resulting legacy of Star Wars films has only made things more diluted, focusing purely on the importance of the existing beats established and not on what made them so readily accessible, looser, more effortlessly involving, fun as hell. Star Wars alone is not the solution. It's a canvas adorned with the best strokes of genre, character, and experience that came together as something we all recognized and responded to as it happened, and that was how, for me, it worked best. Not as a whole sandwich. Just the bread. Star Wars is sandwiches. Okay, look, it's my buddy's analogy, alright? He was watching Chef a few months back, and he saw what it was doing, Jon Favreau discussing the art of filmmaking through cooking and the process of making something your own within a system. I get it. Personally, I thought it was an okay movie and a weird way to get himself together with Sofia Vergara, but sure, I can see how that works. It's definitely something I've kept in mind while watching the project he's been involved in most recently, a new Star Wars show, under the feet of old Yellow Shoes no less, and after expecting very little, it's given me much to think on. Now, I'm not here to say it's a masterpiece or that it fixes Star Wars or whatever, jeez, but as it's continued, I've come to appreciate what it has to say, and, as of the end of Season 2, I believe I have a much clearer picture of its strengths, for why this, of all things, is finally working for me. What we have here is a fine effort to re-examine what made those first few films resonate, while offering meaningful change. In going back to its influences and reassessing their appeal, the show discovers a new path forwards anyone can follow, giving me newfound appreciation for its existence, and reminding me what once made Star Wars, and its icons, so investable to begin with. Icons like Boba Fett. Except, this isn't Boba. This is... Long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there's this guy. A man of few words and even fewer friends, he's part of a clan of warriors called Mandalorians, who maintain a religious lifestyle wearing Templar Knight-esque armor and following a strict code of conduct.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This one's a bit of a maverick, operating as a ruthless bounty hunter, taking jobs from whoever pays best so he can boost his defense stats by 80 points and buy that flying mount he's been eyeing up for this was funny 10 drafts ago, I promise. And that works for him. Feared by many, loved by none, leading his grim little life alone consumed by this aggressive purpose, and then, there's a little baby. Mando realizes this particular bounty, a child with secret and powerful gifts, is maybe not one he should so easily hand over, which is then proven when he easily hands it over. Of course they bond, of course he becomes its protector, and eventually we see the lengths he's willing to take beyond the walls of his religion to find where they truly belong. This is what the world will remember. What I'll remember is a bunch of tiny men punching an egg to drink the goo. The Mandalorian is a very immediate show. The journey is the destination, man, and maybe that was always the benefit of getting Star Wars onto the small screen. The series certainly did expand into a myriad of mediums, and with some considerable success, and failure, but it never expanded to those outside the faith, as it were. We're living in a very different world now. With television having changed an awful lot, now perceived as a thriving medium and a boon to the advent of streaming services, all connected along a social media relay, it's absolutely the right time from a purely business perspective to bring it forward like this, at a scale that works for everything they want to accomplish. Mainstream TV serial, baby. You're not expected to tell one enormous epic. Television is the home of those smaller, ongoing adventures, the possibility of running as long or as short as required, and allowing the focus to fall on the fringe elements of that show's world to the purpose of better informing your main cast development. I'm reminded a lot of Blake 7, actually, not to show my age or anything, well, my parents' age. The show developed by Terry Nation of Doctor Who fame that started with a clumsy plot centered around the main character's false conviction for pedophilia.
All involving children.
It was, bad. But Blake 7, as we walked into the frankly excellent season 3 and 4, ironically enough after Blake was gone, became a wonderful show about rebel space pirates fighting against the Federation. Not being chosen ones or people in any way destined for greatness, it had to rely on the strength of its characters and how they reacted in order to remain consistently compelling. Oh, and spoilers, if you thought the ending of Rogue One was this astounding new idea, I'm afraid Blake's gang was first to the moment in one of the best endings of a TV show ever made. You never wonder why Galaxy Quest lingered on this for so long? I sort of went off on one, didn't I? Anyway, the point being that while I'll never get a Blake's revival I like, I'm resigned to that at this point, Mando scratches the same itch. As a story not largely about the conflict of the Jedi and the Sith, though their influence looms large, the show focuses on life in the margins of the established Star Wars universe, to great benefit. The black and white morality of the huge blockbusters left to the big screen, while those at home ruminate in the grey.
We're peacekeepers. Protecting delegates, suppressing riots, not what I signed up for.
It's smart that the Jedi have slunk back into being a myth, only the audience of yesteryear having witnessed the intricacies of what took down the Empire. Far as the rest of the galaxy was concerned, this was purely a rebel victory. We're putting everyone in the galaxy and the audience basically back on the same page. The pressing matter of the active ongoing conflict, not a world-ending threat, but an undercurrent of always recognizable villainy daring to resurface, a little sturdier than the yo-yo power dynamics of the First Order. I'd say this scaling back is also thanks to the necessities of a smaller budget, though it's not exactly a slouch in that department. Disney's money is evidently being put to use where deemed necessary, which makes the decision to downsize even more pronounced. This appears to be part of that effort to actively re-explore the roots of the franchise, taking place right after Return of the Jedi but before the sequels. It's a literal step back to reassess what makes Star Wars the way it is, and the trimmer, less intense scope of a TV journey seems like a more measured way to explore the available options. Sure, maybe doing a story about a bunch of side characters seems like a perfectly toyetic solution, and that has certainly been the case, but the toys sell for the same reason the original toys sold, because they get you to care about them the same way they got you to care about Luke and the gang. And because the words Baby Yoda are magic. Like, I'm very basic with this franchise. I don't know the name of everything that comes on screen. Like, I don't know about the Lumpy Doofus or the Mingy Jinjos and the Bingy Bong of the Fridley Frong. All the stuff I do retain is from memes and friends. I did make an audible sound when the ice cream tub showed up because a friend taught me about this amazing ritual, and I did clap when I saw the gonk droid because I'm an emotionally stunted man-child and I know what those are. It's not a given I'm going to enjoy something simply because it makes use of the bits of Star Wars I recognize, because that hasn't always worked, nor because other people have told me this is supposed to be good. I tried Rebels and then I didn't try anymore. Yet here, I don't have that problem. I get exactly what's going on and I'm suddenly invested in stuff I've been making fun of for years. No, it goes further. I've seen it work on those who've been out of the loop for decades. There is something quite gratifying about seeing my parents, who I always worry are on the edge of senility, I know you're watching this, say things like Beskar armor with a straight face and accepting the Mandalorian race as a storytelling tool, rather than have them be concerned with, wait, where's she from? Have I been here before? Is that important? Where's Brian Ricks?
I got me dagger stuck.
Ideas that I found so impenetrable in the past, that Boba's armor should be anything more than something he put together in his garden shed, now I see as integral to what it represents, thanks to the experience of living with those people, seeing their treatment of this outfit as a symbol not only of their solidarity, but of their restrictions, hitting much harder than another custom outfit option in a video game. Get a life, Andy. It's the experience placed above the detail that makes all of these revealed fringe aspects so engaging, ramming home what it means to show rather than tell. I don't have any kind of emotion towards, like, Newt Gunray. I know who he is and I get his purpose, an obstacle and a patsy, but I don't have any strong feelings about him. He's just kind of there, spouting dialogue and connecting bits together and never really giving us any deliberate feeling to go on other than lol. But look at these robots! Look how they're shot and how they move! Look at these judgy Mando babes! Look at this big thing! It's huge! Look over there! Is that? Yes, it is! Ah!
Fish people.
I'm back. Even not knowing half the things they're throwing at me, it's all very good at communicating why I and anyone else should care in the moment, in a language all its own. Communication is a big theme here. It's in large part thanks to our central character, whose lack of features demands different methods of expression. Enough people have talked about that. But that has risen from the very nature of the show's construction. What has long been an issue in discussing Star Wars is that sense of human connection, which, you know, the actors were famously making jokes about back in the day because all they could see was the script.
We used to say you can type this stuff, but you can't say it.
It was the way Star Wars connected to us beyond the script that made it a worldwide success, and it has an awful lot to do with the influences it took from, ones that had been perfecting these techniques for decades. The films of, say, Kurosawa or Sergio Leone transcend languages worldwide thanks to a heavy reliance on bold, simple storytelling, strong archetypes, telling the tale through the cuts, the staging and the physical performances. It's what film did so well before it had sound, and what remains a consistent through line in the best of what this overwhelmingly visual medium can do, an image forever being universal. And this is, I think, rather important when depicting an alien culture, or indeed any experience outside of the audience's norm. While there are humans and English-speaking characters and whatnot, this is ultimately a world that is not our own, with weird alien guys whose motivations can't always be explained away with establishing every term and tax credit detail. Consequently, it seems proper then that we would appeal to the language of films that have broken worldwide barriers, resolving questions through the universal dialect of imagery. When George took inspiration, he was mostly looking to use that language to shape the monomyth, the story of an unlikely hero developing on a quest of great importance, a rural ideal of development depicted in many of these films, how anyone could turn out to have, well, a touch of destiny. Sorry. Certainly there are parallels to many of those in how they're expressed within that trilogy, but I found the plot and character similarities were always closer to fiction such as the Arthurian legends, how someone so normal could be guided through the divine right of magic to become a great leader, wizards, helmets, built up aggression against a great warrior father turned bad, depending on your preferred reading of the myth, of course. The Mandalorian takes much more directly from the actual story content of the brunt of those films, lone strangers with a lot of enigmatic history behind them getting involved with the lives of ordinary people in strange towns and unfortunate situations. This makes Mando's adventure much more socially explorative, interacting with others in order to find where his new charge truly belongs, getting emotionally caught up in their problems as a byproduct, and it gives Star Wars a cultured geography I think it's been missing for a while. The newer movies had new species and stuff like that, but I feel they came about as cool designs and looks first, to break up the color script more than anything else. Swapping out stages in a fighting game for something like Water World and Lava World or Lumpy Doofu World. The prequels are rife with the lack of coherency and function, plot-related or otherwise. Contrast with Mando, who gets stuck right in, having to interact with cultures that are as alien to him as they are to us, as we come to, through his need to be involved, take in the mechanics of their lifestyle in order to understand the stakes of the plot at hand, and chart a better map for the quest onwards.
What are you doing?
Negotiating.
We've seen all the reports of the lengths they went to using actual sign language as part of the Tusken Raiders' mode of expression, but what about Kermit's missus over here, who only ever grunts and growls to let us know her thoughts? And apparently far too many of you are into that. It's not like in the prequels, where it feels like they're pulling on examples of existing foreign culture to try and convey another race. This ain't Watto levels of embarrassment. I love Watto. This is more functionally alien, really looking at the form of expressing yourself as a living creature, better emphasizing the hurdles Mando will face to find an appropriate place for Grogu, and sometimes for himself. The textures taken from those classic movies are more introspective, geared towards exploration and a need to grow our understanding. It's not a clear trajectory. Even the music, which has been floating in the back of my head since the show began, is far from the certainty of the John Williams score. When the big, obvious Star Wars tracks come in, which are wonderful by the way, you know what we're going for. There's an unwavering confidence in what they're trying to convey and how they're attempting to get you to feel about what's happening on screen, which I will now attempt to recreate to avoid losing cash dollar. God knows what my neighbours think about any of this. Ludwig Göransson's score is almost the complete opposite. Like, yes, the Morricone Spag West influences are obvious, creating murals of rugged terrain in one's head, but the choice here represents a more, I guess, lunar landscape, one less defined. Even sounds like it's coming from off somewhere over the dunes or something, out of sight and unclear in what it wants us to feel, but pushing us on to discover what's over the horizon. I love how it kicks in, like a little light bulb of purpose turning on, illuminating the road ahead. The main tool borrowed from those films is the strong use of archetypes, and that's what separates it from seeming like an exposition-heavy lore dump into an alien world to an investable experience. There's no confusion over what characters are trying to present. You don't have to know what a Mandalorian is going in. You don't need to know this child's relationship to the Force or Yoda or whatever. The entire selling point of the show is the dynamic, the silent, tough warrior wandering around with a little tiny baby, a direct pull from the lone wolf and cub. That dynamic is something an audience naturally has a very visceral response to, diametrically opposed extremes that elicit extreme reactions, like going out and buying every single one in stock. Anytime the two are on screen, I guarantee this stuff almost writes itself. But despite being so far from each other, they share a level of naive simplicity that the rest of the cast of characters follows on from. All at first glance clearly defined roles from these kinds of tales that will lead us on to discover more.
I will take you to them. I have spoken.
I see many talk of how Mando leans harder into its Eastern influences, and I think that's certainly true when compared to the blend of the original films, but I don't think it's as uneven a split. No secret has been made of the shared appreciation for what both sides of the globes brought to the table, and it's an episode in Season 2 that puts them right against each other as part of a shared sequence. A samurai fight in a garden, followed by a shootout in a one-horse town. I assume horse, there's not a lumpy doofu in sight. In going back to the source and utilizing its language, the flavor of those original films has been maintained without repeating the same expected events, and as it becomes more fluent, it begins to use that language to change our understanding of, well, everything. This feels more explorative than the use of influences on The Last Jedi. I know it's a bit of a thing to rag on this one, but it's only because I feel its very clear goals were actually more effectively used on Mando. It's not that I don't appreciate its message, made by a very talented filmmaker who asks that we move on, but it's through a film that very much doesn't, presenting me with a glossier version of Empire that's simply impossible to respond to with the same level of raw emotion. It's all too knowing, and unable to bring anything as forward as it claims, certainly nothing we didn't anticipate, reassuring us that characters acting against type are actually not at all. Phew, what a relief. By the by, if you want to see the whole Snoke thing done better, play Sly 2. By comparison, The Mandalorian's quest presents a twist on Star Wars by revealing hidden sides to a seemingly rote universe that follow through to change, and letting them speak for themselves in a visual language less about being technically impressive and stylistically off-kilter, and more about bringing an accessible humanity to an inhuman world. When characters act or speak in The Last Jedi, I hear a screenwriter.
You failed him by thinking his choice was made. It wasn't. There's still conflict in him.
In Mando, I just go with it.
Anyone else?
Don't worry, the third one's the worst. No fight there.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
It appears I have shed myself.
I don't think it's an accident that a show imparting this kind of philosophy happens to have Dave Filoni attached. Filoni is a complete Star Wars nerd, loves everything about the franchise there has ever been without exception, far as I know, but he's also a great artist with a bucket full of animation credits who knows his movies. I think Filoni's need for everything to connect and matter from every piece of Star Wars media is actually well-footed because of his abilities to process that in a way that matters to others. His mind a catalogue of everything done so far and knowing why that should leave an impact on the characters, which he is then able to translate to others through his talents. Trust me, that is a skill I see the power of getting overlooked far too often.
Obi-Wan trains Anakin at first out of a promise he makes to Qui-Gon, not because he cares about him. When they get Anakin, when they find him on Tatooine, he says, "Why do I feel like we've found another useless life form?" He's comparing Anakin to Jar Jar. So he's a brother to Anakin eventually, but he's not a father figure. That's a failing for Anakin. He doesn't have the family that he needs. And Anakin then in that moment has to decide to be the father that he's never had. He has to give up all the power in the galaxy and save his son. And that's the selfless act that he does in return for his son. And it works out perfectly. And I draw that line all the way from Phantom Menace to Jedi. Remember to make these stories hopeful. Remember to give that to kids because they really need it. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Did I bring us down?
Wow.
I think we're done.
People like Filoni are why the idea of things being objectively bad, even if I might have made what I feel are strong negative cases within this video itself from my own perspective, is bollocks. Because almost anything can be made to work if the person has the skills to make the connection. Well, just about anything. Go ahead, you can use that to cancel out any comparison complaints I have if you like. Just a free beat-up BMAS ticket for you. Step right up. It doesn't surprise me that he and Jon Favreau have connected through this project either. Jon's always been a nerd himself, and for some reason has gone completely under the radar on this fact in recent years. Everyone looks at James Gunn repurposing deep comic book lore for the Guardians and talks about how nobody else could be doing that, which, yeah, I love what he does too, but they seem to forget that Favreau was there first in Friends, cosplaying as the guy nobody else cared about that he was going to make a killer movie for. And the second one's killer too. Fuck you. Greatest scene of exposition in any Marvel movie.
Fuck you, Mr. Stark. Fuck you, buddy.
Have you seen another one like 2? No, you haven't. Fuck off. In fact, the second movie was our biggest clue, given his reaching out personally to Gennady Tartakovsky to make this kick-ass Bushido garden sequence, and even designing these very stylized-looking hammer droids, all from the guy who also took major inspiration from all this stuff. And guess what else he worked on? The world is a circle without a beginning, etc, etc. Likewise, the team picked clearly has that same shared passion for a particular kind of storytelling that best reflects a love for those influences. I mean, creatively we're working in a good space with good people. The only episode I, ironically enough, had a bit of a problem with being the Seven Samurai throwback. Maybe not repurposing that particular film in a way I felt was anything more than a massive wink. It's no Zuko alone. Still, I felt it was made well by Bryce Dallas Howard, and I liked her other episode great, so whatever man, glad Spidey saved you from the crane. One of the nice things about all this star power is that it's actually a fun reveal to be told who directed the episode you just watched. And before a pal tells you in chat, asshole, Robert Rodriguez. I mean, that man knows how to make movies, though to be honest, the biggest noise I made was when the episode ended and it said... Ah, finally. I want to talk about Peyton Reed, actually, because, like, okay, I remember when Edgar Wright got booted off Ant-Man and Peyton got brought in, and everybody, including me, was like, oh, look, here he comes, the actual yes man, here comes the corporation, but Ant-Man didn't end up feeling as entirely, emphasis on entirely, banal as expected. Actually, I could see a lot of great stuff going on, and as it turns out, most of it surprisingly enough coming from Peyton, a hugely enthusiastic genre nut and comic book fan. The quantum realm and the way they depicted it, that was all his choice. Ant-Man 2 was also rocky, but some of the sequences they wanted to go full ham on were kind of excellent. I did not think we'd be all about the Wasp as a great character to watch in creative action sequences, okay? And then I finally see Downward Love, and like, you know, I'm a huge fan of those Doris Day films. I get it. I get what it's doing. I see it's doing its own thing too. I always thought I was the only person who still cared about those. This is kind of wonderful. Catch a Block Kenobi mincing from scene to scene. Renee Zellweger giving the greatest monologue of her career. Niles is here.
Where's my geisha? I need my shoes.
I'm suddenly feeling very warm towards Peyton Reed. I would do anything. And then he comes in and directs some amazing episodes. Look, alright, my point is the Marvel guys love making genre stuff. I can't blame even Star Wars for capitulating and finally bringing them on board. It's not only the series which is steeped in the language of movie history, it's the directors themselves who live and breathe this stuff and who have been as carefully cast as the actors on screen. Perhaps my favourite episode came from Rick Famuyiwa, whose work was itself a throwback to another famous genre movie of a completely different stripe, and the choice certainly wasn't made haphazardly, a movie whose remake was absolutely annihilated by A New Hope at the box office, then marking the beginning of the blockbuster and the death of everything else. Outside of the major plot similarities, it's the discussion of morality that likewise takes centre stage in once again determining the series' connection with its past. I've always been appreciative of Bill Burr, and I love QB, but like, did I think of him as an actor to know? I don't know. It's not entirely outside of my understanding of Bill as Bill, right? I didn't much think of Miggs Mayfield either. Guy looked like a space Deadshot without much else going on, until they got him here.
Look, if you were born on Manda-lore, you believe one thing. If you're born on Alderaan, you believe something else. But guess what? Neither one of them exists anymore.
Like most westerns or war movies, the characters have some grit, the history of the Empire's actions live with them, and the way they've become is only a reaction to the terrible things they've experienced firsthand. Those genre movies were fun and adventurous, but also always a place where the realities of their existence were treated with as much catharsis as pity, old men trying hard to reconcile their past with their future as time marched forward. Miggs' dilemma certainly speaks for that feeling, and the reaction that follows cuts to the heart of what Star Wars has always ignited on a primal level.
To the Empire.
It's been great to see a cast that doesn't look like a bunch of pretty 20-somethings wandering around getting uppity. Personally, the best film of ugly people will always be The Taking of Pelham 123. Not a single member of that cast who doesn't look like a real-ass person. This is beautiful. Best final shot. But this has some choice faces attached to these less than savoury characters. Ming-Na Wen's back. Giancarlo wants his crumby of Corky. We've got Clancy Brown playing Satan. He seems to be pretty good at that. Werner Herzog is still a hell of a pull, though I was less surprised given I'd already had my world changed by him showing up in the very much okay Jack Reacher, as what seems like a man who'd wandered onto the set and gotten mistaken for someone in the movie. Amazing.
Come on, baby. Do the magic hand thing.
Carl Weathers likewise, kind of a great cultural choice. Most of us remember Carl from the era when Star Wars was freshly big. The blockbusters were coming, and he's a great link to that. I think it's impossible not to be happy to see him, and even better when the credits come up and it's like, good for you, man. The cast puts me back in that sweet spot A New Hope established of characters we take seriously, still capable of some low-key spontaneity, a very natural sense of humour. John Boyega was about as good as it got for me in the sequels, and Catcher Block's the only one having fun before that, and maybe this guy. But here I pretty much like everyone, and I think they're more flawed and reactive than some might have given credit, like Cara Dune. Obviously, the conversation around that character is a whole thing right now. In fact, it became a thing as I was typing her name for the script, which is something. Makes you realize how long I've been doing this. But I do think Cara Dune was a neat foil to Mando. I think she finds herself rightfully challenged and learning from the experience, rather than the all-knowing winner she seems to have been painted as by her detractors, while also well representing the reach of the Resistance. In terms of her not being there anymore, I don't actually think we lose too much in terms of evolving threads. Her path forward seemed to be settled, but it is a shame to miss out on anything that seems to offer the team a dynamic worth building on, and you know, that's how it be.
So even if you don't do the character of Don Corleone,
Let me try.
the attitude of, hey,
Yeah.
not business first, let's enjoy the meal.
I am told that you can lead me to others of my kind.
Hey, it's uncouth to talk business immediately. Just enjoy the entertainment.
It feels like everyone working on this, the way they've shown it to us, is absolutely treating it as an opportunity to play, expressing their adoration of film through the franchise made for that same reason. And you know what? It works.
I took my Boba Fett and Stormtrooper Halloween costumes and put them on my sons and went into the backyard and filmed Boba's arrival. Dave said, wait a minute, were those just action figures I saw? And I said, well, yeah, I didn't have anything else on hand. And he said, no, you don't understand. That makes it the coolest animatic ever. And I just thought, these are my people.
I get the impression people are really turned on by the whole tactile feel of the thing. Getting on set with practical creatures and weathered spaces looking like they've been standing there forever. Not as clean as the sequels, you know? All of that gets across to us, like they're letting us enjoy the way it's produced as much as the way it's told. Noteworthy that it chooses to showcase its credits through these big conceptual drawings, very possibly made long after the show was complete, but letting the audience experience each episode as a series of pitch boards. We're getting physically closer to what this was when it began, once thinking of Star Wars as a part of film more than anything else, with so many wanting to emulate it with their handycams and bedroom sheets. This was a language that ignited something, and this isn't a deep thing, this is a life thing. A less cynical feeling I think The Mandalorian remarkably has going for it in the face of all the reasons it shouldn't. Perhaps a lesson learned by someone who knows of that balance in making what you want within such a system. There is one aspect, of course, that I think brings the mission of the show to the forefront, holding everything together and pulling it from the old further into the new. A single character who seems so uncomplicated, yet offers a much more complex dilemma than the heroes before him, and who single-handedly gave me a completely new appreciation for the entirety of Star Wars as a historical touchstone for millions of fans. This guy. Boba Fett might have not lived up to the hype, but it didn't stop his fans. Those around on the internet before Disney Plus know that the rumours for whatever was next were never about a Mandalorian. They were about Boba specifically. A Boba Fett spin-off movie, a Boba Fett show, Michael B. Jordan Boba, Boba. Boba Fett was the hook that got this project moving, and there's a reason for that, even after years of seemingly fruitless efforts. It's the look. Boba's lack of face, the mystery of who this guy was, came directly from the history of archetypes present in those influences. People could project whatever they wanted onto him, turning the character into something greater than his actual purpose allowed. Sure, that makes for a great villain, but it makes for a perfect hero.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Mando is very much an inversion of heroes like Luke, Finn, Rey. These characters start small and become something much more empowered, symbolically proving those around them wrong, while the Mandalorian is already at peak performance. He doesn't have difficulty dealing with physical threats, he has the drive to get stronger, he has the support base to become something unstoppable. He isn't a non-believer becoming a believer, sacrificing his ordinary life to become something greater than himself. He's already on that path to greatness. But he has no face. Other heroes were people given outward personalities, emotionally vulnerable, but the Mandalorian protects all exposure to any kind of emotion from behind his mask, refusing to veer off course, and offering a blank slate the audience can, at first, vicariously project themselves onto. As Mando takes on the role of a parent and is forced to care for another person, he is forced into situations he would otherwise avoid, ones that require a skill set outside of his already impressive arsenal, becoming a social creature who has to think about the consequences of what happens when an interaction goes south. He has to suddenly learn about how to negotiate and how to do so for genuine, empathetic reasons, building trust and relationships which, when you don't have a face, can be very difficult. It's easy for us to project a heroic persona onto Din, but it's equally easy for others around him to see something they dislike until proven otherwise. The show doesn't actually celebrate his status as a badass. Early on, people announce his presence and speak of the legends his kind has spawned, but he never revels in them. He doesn't bask in his victories or use it to spread fear. It's always like, yeah, I am that guy, I guess. Sad sigh. To the audience, he was marketed on the back of an icon we all loved. To the universe he inhabits, he is also a pre-existing icon they all feared. Either way, he's a presence, something both sides of the screen believe in as soon as the show begins. But that's not enough, is it? That's not who he really is.
The asset was to be terminated.
I mentioned before how a tough warrior walking around with a child is certainly a great image in its own right, but I think there's a second layer of benefit to those who recognize the characters they're based on from the originals. Many of the sequel and prequel characters are pretty much the same as the archetypes they're copying from the franchise prior, but these take from well-known images and turn them on their head. We all anticipated another Boba, we all called him Baby Yoda, but the script has flipped those expectations to quite genuinely subvert what that means for these two complete strangers. Knowledge those who don't know and then become interested will appreciate if they go looking for more detail. It's why I think Season 2's decision to bring in a bunch of different characters from existing Star Wars media was perfect, a move some complained about because they felt the lore was once again encroaching on the existing story. Yet this isn't how it comes across to a layman, watching with even laymen, at all. Straight up, I've never seen Clone Wars. I'm changing that because of this. Yes, it certainly does satisfy the desire from fans to see these characters in the live-action Star Wars universe, but that concept of taking characters who are also huge icons within the series translates to those not in the know as clearly established, influential individuals judging his experience and serving as direct comparisons to his own journey. As he explores the wider galaxy, searching for an answer to his problem, he discovers people who are already at the end of their character arc, strong personalities who all have a vested interest in his quest, all ready to offer up advice, and his assessment of them is a key part of his development. Ahsoka, the first Jedi he has ever met, who is certainly an ally, is still someone he keeps distance from thanks to his own preconceptions. That could be who Grogu becomes if he hands him over. He's not sure how he'd feel about that change. How about Coconut Head over here? I don't know her full backstory, but I don't need to. Another Mandalorian trying to make him engage on her level is obviously someone self-interested, and representative of a dogmatic ideology almost as strong as the one he sidestepped, which, by the end of the series, becomes even more direct. People's expectations of the Mandalorian's role becomes more intrusive. His attempts to hand-wave the idea of who he is doesn't fly with all these others who are telling him what he should be, so when the comparisons come full circle, the reality of who he really is sinks in. Because, you see, while Mando was sold on the same principles, he is not Boba Fett. This all started with the idea of a character who was marketed into oblivion, who has long been in talks for a revival, and who was completely eviscerated into meaninglessness with every detail revealed about who he was, taking away from his mystique bit by bit until he was merely a joke about the self-image of fat nerds, because everything's about fat nerds.
Oh, what, like you a big fan of the fat?
Hardcore fans would see him again in other forms, but to us normie Normans, it all seemed disappointing. I know I didn't want anything from Attack of the Clones to be validated. It ruined my childhood, but here's the thing, B-Mask. Shut up. Filoni and Favreau once again take all of that information and use it to present a character who no longer has a straightforward history, yet has become a frightening figure with his own coda. He's the man everyone's expecting when they look at Din, carving out his own violent destiny to get what he wants. And he's there to remind not just us, but the people in that universe who the big dog is.
Nice shot. I was aiming for the other one.
It's greatly symbolic, to the legacy of the character of course, but most importantly to the story at hand, better establishing Din's way of being close to the end of Season 2, and I like the implication that maybe letting him continue was perhaps a mistake. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Merry Christmas. It works directly with the show's intentions rather than act as a fan service distraction, and that's how all of these pre-existing figures have been approached to better serve this new story. It's like, why not repurpose things with great potential if we have a genuinely good way of making them matter to another narrative? We can piss and moan about all the ways those annoyingly confusing concepts kinda turned a lot of us away. I've certainly done that here, so will you, no shame. Or we can repurpose it into a better narrative that tames the beast of a lore that Filoni is intent on making us love. And if you think that means we'll be getting a Henry VIII style K-Adimundi polygamy drama, then I bloody well hope so. Anyway, the point being that Mando is looking at this reflection of himself, the most eminent comparison having been through so many others, and goes, well, that's not who I am. That's still not me. He's mostly been on autopilot, hasn't fought for an ideal that resonates with the kind of person he really is, only what was always anticipated. Yet, he's far from a passive bystander. A lot of stuff is happening within. At every turn, his beliefs are thrown into doubt. His ability to take in another, his need for assistance, his anger towards droids, who killed his parents, fully flipped when he finds himself passionately debating the position that a droid doesn't have to destroy itself, and still missing the point that it can't possibly respond in kind.
But you'll be destroyed.
And you will live, and I will have served my purpose.
No, we need you.
There's nothing to be sad about. I've never been alive.
I'm not sad.
Yes, you are. I'm a nurse droid. I've analyzed your voice.
Pedro Pascal's agreement to stay off screen in the role was of huge importance to this. The reveal of his face as a weakness, then as a tool, then as a choice, conveys someone who's slowly discovering that something existed before The Mandalorian, a complete reversal of his cinematic forebears, a triumphant symbol of the show's ultimate goal. Star Wars has been struggling to identify what lies beneath the helmet since the credits rolled on return. Every surface has been explored, every detail has been scrutinized, but the personality that lay within has taken longer to emerge. Something that existed long ago calling from the distant past, trapped within the shell of its own success. That call has finally been answered, but instead of repeating its words verbatim, somebody's listened to hear what it has to say, and used that to change the trajectory of people doomed to a fixed existence. The Mandalorian's triumph, what I appreciate more than anything, is how it shows that nothing is set in stone. Anyone at any time can become something other than what they are now. Mandalorians, prequel lore, animation showrunners, comedians, chefs, lumpy doofus, Star Wars. It's all salvageable. And we can, when presented effectively, come to appreciate it all. But perhaps the boldest move in showing an appreciation for how much this tale has changed is in the closing moments of that second season. Because, while the arrival of that well-known hero as he makes his way to the child's location is as stunning as it is, and pulls on, for many longtime fans, some very easy strings, the reality of it is so wonderful. moved me so much because of what it means for the Mandalorian as a whole. It didn't happen because that particular hero is always going to save the day, someone so good and so beloved. It happened because Din made it possible. He changed the course in his life to benefit another, stepping off the path to come into contact with someone so outside his belief system, an enemy that he trusts will protect someone he cares about, and in doing so, has now altered the entire course of life for so many others. He has relinquished destiny to become something else, something of his own making, and after all that trepidation, wandering blind for so long, he finally did it. He found another way. Thank you for watching, everyone. It's been quite some time since I got back into the whole video making thing thanks to a number of personal issues, but I'm back and I have to give an enormous thank you to my patrons for sticking by in a very difficult time. I know this video is late, but hey, we finally got it done and there should be lots more to come. If you liked this, make sure to check out some of the other videos I've done, which are not Star Wars related, which, you know, you'll probably have to get used to because I'm not really planning to do this franchise ever again. I think I've done my time. That's right. I'm out. We set free!